jailer. Fight for your freedom. The jailer is the key. Kill him, and you'll be free.
This game is so fucking sick. Let me talk to you about it. I played this game in the same year that it came out in 2016, and I'm still thinking about it. It's wild to me that I don't see this game talked about whenever the greatest indies are brought up. It was created and released by the Game Bakers, who more recently released the game Haven in 2020. Seems like a very unsung dev with a really talented team. Furi might not offer something entirely unique, but it does everything it tries to do exceptionally well, all wrapped up in a very inspired presentation. You play as a nameless prisoner being held in a fantastical jail in space that superficially reminds me of Naraka, the Buddhist depiction of hell, and Dante's Inferno, the Christian-inspired depiction in hell, in the way that it clearly separates the forms of punishment. Or impelled down if you're an intellectual. Who the fuck is this guy? The first thing the player is greeted with is a beating from a jailer with a demonic white mask encircling his helmet. This puts you to sleep for a time period before you're awoken by a man in an odd-looking rabbit mask. This furry freak functions as a sort of narrator, giving slight glimpses into motivations of characters, lore, and asks that you break free. This is all given to the player in a pretty entrancing way. This game has fantastic shots in between bosses where the player is left to ruminate on little pieces of information we're receiving from the rabbit, or if he's even telling the truth. It's a lovely touch, and it breaks up huge encounters very nicely. Early dialogue also suggests that whoever you are, the player, you aren't human. Graphics are cel-shaded with a distinct attention to detail when concerning the characters. Each design really adds to them, which is essential when you're going to be spending all of your time in the game with them. The environments are also fascinating, as most of them are in service of getting you to the next area, which is always an inspiring spectacle with magical sci-fi trimmings. They also serve as a way to get to know your next opponent before actually meeting them. This is their section of the prison, but it's also kind of like their home. The inspiration for the tone of the game, the character designs, and even gameplay in some ways, is Afro Samurai. Afro Samurai is a wonderful, subtle in some ways, over-the-top in most ways, anime about a lone samurai who's out for revenge for his father. It seems that the stoicism and purpose that the main character carries himself with is also gifted to the protagonist of Furi. The quiet moments in between bosses, although devoid of his own dialogue, adds to his character through his refusal to comment on anything being told to him. It just creates the visual of a stoic badass, which is such a popular character archetype in manga and anime because it allows moments where the characters reflect or show any personality to really shine. These characters let their actions speak for them. Fuck, I need to do a Berserk video. That shit is going to be so much work. I'd been avoiding it until I finished talking about Afro, but the Game Bakers even hired the artist for Afro Samurai, the manga, Takashi Okazaki. He was the character designer. You can most clearly see the original artist's hand in his signature free-flowing frizzy hair on black and brown characters. His input is definitely played into the memorability of the characters. They're all so unique, intense, or just interesting. Small parts of the game were even reportedly changed to fit these character designs. They were clearly smitten with his work, and who wouldn't be if you managed to contact and work with him? Fun fact, he literally thought it was a scam email when they said they wanted to work with him on a game. Furi's entire gameplay consists of just bosses. Every boss fight consists of several phases, which is to be expected in a game with this structure. These fights can last around 10 or 20 minutes without a game over, which makes it feel really momentous when finishing one off. Every fight also has 2 different modes of combat. I'm going to refer to these modes as top-down and showdown. During most phases, you're going to need to get through a top-down segment to get to a showdown segment to finish an entire phase. Top-down segments function as both a bullet hell twin-stick shooter, and I guess you could call it a hack and slash too, except you're only slashing one thing, the boss. I hate genre names, man. In top-down mode, you use the right stick to aim and shoot your gun. It can destroy some projectiles, chip away at the boss, and use the charge shot to get rid of more than one projectile, and slightly chunk the boss from a safe distance. Showdown mode is when a visible ring restricts your movements to right in front of the enemy to create a tense combat situation, focusing on melee. I enter this mode by default whenever somebody walks into my gas station at 3 AM. Most of the rest of the moves that I'm going to mention are available to use in both top-down and showdown mode. You can dodge, which kind of boils down to a teleport in the direction pushed, or charge it for a huge jump forward in top-down mode. You can also parry melee attacks. Doing so will grant you a bit of health. If you're used to parry mechanics in other games, this should be easier, honestly. If you perfect parry, which is what it sounds like, it's parrying during a very brief window, you go through a little beatdown animation which does a good chunk of damage and heals you for a bit as well. It's badass too. Finally, your bread and butter, the basic sword slash to use on openings that you find through trial, error, and your own intuition, because typically bosses are not going to just let you wail on them freely. During top-down segments, you can hold this button to charge it for both a massive jump forward and a strong slash at the same time. Showdown segments just give you a very strong slash when performing that action. You can also use the shoot button to charge your sword. Oh my god, your sword. Your fucking sword. You can also use the shoot button to charge your sword. If you don't get hit before the next time you land a strike, it deals massive damage. I use this every time I knock down an opponent or perfect parry. These showdown segments are pretty tense and allows for bosses to perform specific actions that require you to dodge. It's probably my favorite part of the game. Now, I think the mechanic that takes Furi from being great to amazing is regeneration. Bosses have phases which are treated the same way as the player's lives, chances, whatever you want to call them. When your health bar depletes, you lose a life. I call it life because I don't know what else to call it. And the enemy reverts to the beginning of that boss phase. If you get through a boss phase, if you take out one of its lives, you regenerate your health for that life and gain another one back to a maximum of 3. This gives you a greater chance to always come back, since you can't realistically know the timing or trick to every attack just by seeing it once. If something felt totally unfair, caught you off guard, you have massive comeback potential thanks to this mechanic. It takes these fights from feeling like regular bosses to full-on wars, just because there is potentially so much time in between actually getting a game over. It's uninterrupted gameplay. It's so good. I think this is inspired by anime fights in general, which on special occasions dedicate an entire episode or several chapters to a single fight, which are elevated and celebrated in anime communities and even function as a draw for people interested in something more action-oriented. When done right, it should feel tense, exciting, and full of excellent animation for you to marvel at. This game captures those broad qualities and feelings. The game offers 3 different difficulty options: Promenade, Furi, and Furrier. Promenade, no idea if I'm saying that right, are for those who want to get through it and experience fights and a story with few moments to get stuck on. Furi is the recommended difficulty. It provides a fun experience and can at times be a memorable challenge. Furrier is an unlockable difficulty, available after completing the game. All fights become amped, damage numbers get changed, and the bosses are given new and more relentless attack patterns. Some of these segments and fights get so specific that it won't feel possible the first or second time you try to fight. I think this is the best difficulty, and it's kind of a shame that it's an unlockable one only, but it's really worth it to replay the game to actually play this. I think it's really fun. The music was conceptualized by nothing more than a feeling. The creative director had experience boxing and wanted to capture the feeling of walking up to a fight, nervously but excited with his headphones in, receiving a boost from fitting music. It's electronic, it always starts slow, it's a new environment, but ramps up the closer you get to an arena, till an explosive track takes over during the action. Every individual component of this game works to create a masterclass experience, which could be credited to the focused direction, which apparently avoided consensus from the team for the sake of a unified vision. Furi's insane. I love this game, dude. Furi is usually available for $20, and it's a fairly short game, so most players can finish it under like 6 hours. But the experience is really impactful. If you go back and play Furrier difficulty, it could give you way more game time, but I'd say it's worth it at the standard price, and a steal if it's on sale. If you're on the fence and you don't got the money, I totally get it. Just keep a lookout, wait for a sale, it's totally worth it. I love this game. That's the end for people who don't want to be spoiled. I'm kind of surprised I had so much to say about it without giving anything away. I'm going to be going through the entire game's events and each boss's mechanics, so if that's something you want to hear, I'm going to be referencing Furi difficulty since that is the experience that most players are going to have. Let's go.
You were a weapon, a bringer of death, and now you're nothing. I will keep on killing you, again and again. I am your future, an eternity of slow, painful deaths. I hear thunder, pitter patter. Time to wake up. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here with you.
Shake your head. Nod your head. It's time to go. See what they did to you? Pull yourself together. Get out of prison. Kill the jailer. Fight for your freedom. The jailer is the key. Kill him, and you'll be free.
After that strange awakening, you take the sword granted to you and walk towards the stone clearing in the dreary storm. The white-masked guard plants his staff into the ground and our perspectives change to view the scope of the entire game. A collection of floating worlds, layers of prison. It seems he's alerted at the other locations. You raise your weapon in defiance, to the delight of the jailer. This chapter is referred to as the Chain, so that's what we're going to be calling this boss. The Chain is an excellent tone setter for the whole game. He has a striking design, hype boss music, and a hateable set of lines to get the player excited to beat him. He also gives a bit of info on our protagonist. Whatever he is, he's not human because he can regenerate. It isn't just a game mechanic. His first two phases should be a cakewalk. They're used to teach the player the controls, and I think it's a really effective tutorial. It lays out everything you're going to need for the whole game. It's also so forgiving that you can attempt any mechanic you want in the fight. He throws out projectiles for you to weave around and break with your own projectiles. Blocking or dodging is required to avoid certain moves. Some attacks place a red indicator on the ground for you to avoid. His final phase is a relentless barrage of bullets for you to break and dodge. When he can't throw out any more, you just move in to dismantle him in a showdown. It's a solid fight, and it's really great for a beginner. You cut the Chain down, stabbing him in the heart. His dying breath assures you that you wish you'll be back in your cell. Rabbit, that's what I'm going to be calling him now, congratulates you on a job well done. He talks about freedom and how you're both after it. Somehow, Rabbit just floats around, appearing from nowhere, seemingly playing with his placement and shots. He knows the next opponent and gives you some valuable insight. This is a prison, within a prison, meant to lock her away. They used her madness like a weapon once they caged her, and have her function like a guard dog since she rips anything she comes into contact with into pieces. The scale of the prison adds to the feeling of danger approaching the next fight. Camera angles from this point forward are going to be played with to provide some eye candy for each layer of the prison as you're given information on the next fighter, yourself, the prison, and Rabbit. It's so sick and gets me hyped for the next fight. The walks leading up to fights do a good job of conveying the personality of your next opponent before you even meet them. To have the designs revealed to you becomes an anticipation in itself. Just look at this little moment leading up to the prison, it's so fucking cool.
I'll tell you what I know on the way. But don't expect all the answers. It's all about what a man does.
The way Rabbit just kind of appears out of nowhere seems to be functionally similar to the character Ninja in Afro Samurai.
RPG in a motherfucking backpack?
Aside from the comic relief that Ninja provides. I would say the design is somewhat inspired by the character Gino, who wears a head like a stuffed bear. Rabbit wears a mask like a stuffed rabbit, or a furry if you want to go there. Furi keeps a consistently mysterious and ominous tone outside of fights, which matches up pretty well with the character Afro, who speaks almost not at all during the show. When fights do happen, it's always a spectacle, just like Afro Samurai. That's about all you're going to get for comparisons. Aside from the art, it's only structurally similar to Afro Samurai in the sense that the main character fights these unique characters in an over-the-top fashion. It'll probably be annoying if I keep bringing it up anyway. Walking through the prison, you see nothing but walls and a pit at the center with an electric field. The next jailer, the Strap, makes herself known by firing a laser at you and breaks through a wall behind you. She's strapped to a machine with a wheel, using her head as a gun to shoot you and a hammer to crush you. She might be Yeah, she might be literally meat. This boss focuses a lot more on projectiles. She shoots tons of them at you with tons of different effects. You could break some split up and track you, some hone in on you until it collides with a wall. They obviously wanted to turn up the intensity with this fight, but they didn't want to overwhelm the player with learning all new ways that a projectile could be thrown out, since they give you plenty of space to run around and walls to hide behind. As the fight progresses, bullet patterns obviously get more dangerous, her lasers get more and more tough to dodge, and she starts to use more and more melee attacks, trying to slash you with a scythe when smashing her head into you doesn't work. In the second to last phase, she gets more infuriated at your existence and uses her scythe to break out of her confinements and disappear from view. The music dims as you wander around the area, looking for your opponent. Appearing at a randomized spot, she screams and runs towards you like a feral animal, ready to tear you to shreds. You can shoot her or attempt to slash her, but the beginning of this phase remains the same. She'll try to slash you to pieces and you have to waggle the shit out of that controller like you getting dirty. I had to be careful because the sticks on my controller are magnetic and just fly. Holy fuck, my nails are long. Again, she'll have more attacks, but this time with her razor sharp nails. She's just like me. Her final phase is another barrage. She jumps to a spot on the map and writhes in agony. I do this in the morning sometimes. It's honestly a super easy phase. You break the projectiles coming your way and it's nowhere near enough to overwhelm you if you just keep shooting. After that, she'll fire a laser back and forth till she just runs out of energy. The charge dash is super useful here. She still has a little left in the tank as you go to finish her off, firing lasers close range until she finally has an opening where you just slice her up. I love this fight. It's what you've seen before in a tougher situation, a more interesting stage, phase-specific changes in the boss's appearance and fighting style. You also need to use the charge dash to dodge a move in this fight, which you don't need to worry about before. It's also interesting that her head was a literal gun, something Chainsaw Man would shamelessly steal roughly 3 years later. The fight ends with her pushing you towards the pit in the center of the arena, only for you to pull a sick sumo move and swing her into it, electrocuting her to death. Moving on, the next layer has bright blue skies, windmills constantly turning, and pink sand that naturally forms patterns resembling a Zen garden beneath your feet. Walking onto the metal plate in front of you summons more metal plates to form a bridge in front of you. The presentation of this area is dreamlike with how meaningless gravity feels, yet is still clearly in effect. Rabbit speaks of the next jailer, a prophet, who can see the future apparently. He questions his knowledge since he should have warned everyone, or at least warned him, of an event that had occurred. The event that probably led to your imprisonment. You finally reach him, the Line. He's an old man, sitting on a stone, levitating a few rocks in front of him. He's skinny with a bit of a belly and a hairline pushed back to half of his head. He has a massive afro and wears a pair of headphones, a wise old man archetype with modern trimmings. He speaks from a place of authority in a calm manner. He says ever since you appeared, his visions of the future have stopped. Him saying he can't kill you is less of a moral thing and more like he physically can't. Your regeneration is so strong that you're incapable of dying. Even your game overs are canon, that's kinda crazy. This fight, in my opinion, is the first time that the player is tested in a meaningful capacity. First phase, he puts up panels all around him and emits an energy that bounces off the walls and back to him. The more you shoot the panels, the more energy that gets reflected back to you. You need to slowly wear down the panels to land a shot on the line. Anything will get you to the next phase, even the weakest shot. Phases 2 and 3 have several dodging segments. Some include a pillar that you need to break down in order to progress, but attacking said pillar creates another projectile to dodge. It's up to you how quickly and how dangerous you want the fight to be. The final phase starts with an organized assault of unblockables that hone in on you while you dodge waves. After that, he unleashes everything he has, and the arena becomes a kaleidoscope of colored bullets. He summons 8 final pillars for you to destroy while you weave through this wild scene. The screen will get so flooded that you can't rely on regular shots to finish it quickly. You need to shoot through projectiles with a charge shot and get used to your movement speed when you do it. One final parry after the barrage, and you slice him to death. I love the design of this boss fight. The entire time he preaches patience, which is ultimately how you beat him. A lot of the suffering in this fight is of your own creation. I think people are either gonna love or hate this though. What's that bullshit people have been talking about recently about video games? It's like ludonarrative dissonance. It's like if the gameplay doesn't match up with what's happening in the game or the story or whatever. What's the opposite? Ludonarrative harmony? Whatever it is, that's what I feel here. It's fucking sick. I never thought I would actually value something like that. I think it makes the fight way better. Yeah, the slower you allow yourself to be in a fight, the easier it is, and the fight was so well put together for the theme that they were going for. Really cool boss fight. The next world you find yourself in is like a sewer. Before, I thought all these worlds were constructed to house criminals and jailers, but the walk to the next area shows a world that feels lived in. Weathered structures, a path that leads to a door that doesn't work, metal piping scattered throughout. People used to live here. Rabbit keeps talking about a single event, both here and the area before. Whatever it was, it involved you. At this point, I assume that your character attacked this area before he was captured and locked away. Rabbit tells you to ignore whatever crazy babble that fish face has to say. Eventually, you come to a murky body of water. Out of it comes a figure that looks similar to the Strap. This one is the Scale. He has boots that most likely propel him underwater, 2 giant spikes attached to either arm, and a large bulbous head with cylinders protruding from it. His head looks like a sea mine. It go hard, it's so good, I love it, look at that. My previous theory is confirmed somewhat when the Scale says things like they're looking for revenge and that you created them. This fight starts out easy and manageable and continues to add more and more as it goes on. Nothing really new is done in this fight. It's not bad, it's just not particularly a memorable one, just because the other ones were so unique. There is a unique segment where you need to avoid abilities by multiple Scale clones, but it's a cakewalk, honestly. It's a very manageable fight. Way easier than the line, which is a bit disappointing, especially because the arena and design are so cool. Not much is gleaned from Rabbit this time other than this.
I thought about it for so long. Destruction of the world on one hand, but on the other, what about my world? Why should their world be more valuable than mine?
Interesting line. Moving along, he tries to hype you up to kill the next jailer, talking about how he was the one who captured you. The next cutscene is pretty rich with character and paints a clear picture of the man he is. In the dome where you expect to find an arena for your next fight, you do, but you also see a home. A young boy looks on in fear from across the arena. He runs to a knightly looking man with a large sword and shield. This is the Hand. Now I'm just guessing, but I'd say that the 2 most popular depictions of swordsmen in fiction are knights and samurai. The Hand clearly looks like a knight, while you use a sword styled after a katana, the sword that samurai use. It's an awesome concept for a fight. Both roles are associated with honor, but you're not defending anything or behaving honorably by escaping. It's a selfish act. You know that you'll eventually cut this man down and leave that boy without a father. That's how this game works. He fights for him, but we don't know what the protagonist's purpose is or how to feel about anything. All you have to think about are Rabbit's words. The fight itself is pretty easy. You quickly find out that the shield leaves the Hand immune to projectiles. You simply walk forward, attempt to parry an attack, and punish. At this point, this shouldn't be an issue. You can fire projectiles while he's firing his own moves so that you can chip him down a bit though. Other than that, I don't think much new is done once again. It's a solid fight, but I still think it pales in comparison to The Line. The final phase is a little interesting. The arena gets smaller and the Hand fires off lasers, but it's pretty easy to avoid. This leads to the final showdown, where he just relentlessly attacks. You're unable to regenerate during this phase, which makes sense, it'll just be cake at that point. The slashes get progressively slower, signifying him losing energy, and making the timing a bit trickier. It's a bit tricky to block every time, but it doesn't matter. You can pretty easily make it out to the end. You cut him down and continue your struggle. The next area starts in crumbling Fire Missoula, which leads into a lush, grassy world. Rabbit talks about how much he hates this next bitch. She got him locked up. He calls her arrogant and self-righteous, says that she'll put on a show, but she's just trying to clean up her mess. Honestly, got no clue what he's talking about. Is she the leader of this group that had this prison built? That's kind of what I'm imagining. You see the next jailer, the song on the bridge outside of the castle, and you prepare for a fight, but she invites you to join her for a walk. If you're like me, you take note of her ugly pants, lower your guard, and listen. She said she had this place constructed to house you, saying she can't let you into her own world, but she wants to invite him to stay here, rather than be locked back up in the previous cell. Her extending this offer is actually huge because, as we've seen before with the man's son staying with him, these places actually function as homes for the jailer. She's asking you to spend your entire life with her. The game actually gives you the option to just end the game here if you stand there for like 2 minutes. The credits roll and everything. It would be an anticlimactic ending, but no more blood would be shed. This option is not as tantalizing as it could be because we don't know about the protagonist's intentions. The mystery kind of drives the player forward. Continuing forces you to fight. Not much new is done here again, but it's a well done fight with significantly more challenge to it than the previous. So far, she probably has the hardest to deal with patterns. pretty good fight. The only super unique move that I can think of is that she dive bombs you occasionally, which is a parryable move that you can get some damage off on her with. The final phase kind of reminds me of a fight we fought before, in a good way. She places 4 pillars around the arena, which is pretty large, so you gotta travel to get to them, and she just infinitely spams abilities while you take them out. The more you break, the more dangerous the final barrage is. Destroying the 4th one has her launch out her final attack pattern that you need to weave through in order to cut her down in one swing. After the fight, she wears a look of disappointment on her face as she begrudgingly accepts her defeat. It's disappointment in you, not in the outcome. She outstretches her arms and waits for you to take her life. After you give a mournful look, you accept your victory. Rabbit takes note of this interaction. Next, you wander into a room of holograms. These are the layers we saw at the beginning of the game, the levels we've been through already. We also get a sneak peek at the layouts of the future levels. Rabbit suddenly appears and he says he just got finished with the guardian of this room, but it turns out to be a joke just moments later. He reveals that he was the master architect behind the prison, and that he built it in this very room. He finally reveals his purpose for helping you too. It's to see his daughter again. He decided that was worth more than his duty. His prison is so airtight that the only way out is through the front door, and you have to get through all of the guardians to do that. The next location is encased in hexagonal panels. Machines examine the protagonist as they walk forward. Rabbit admires the next one's cunning and asks that you stay on your guard. The panels give out below your feet and you're dropped into a hex-paneled chamber. The first action is taken by the next jailer, the Burst, who tries to snipe you down before you even notice. You jump to a wall and the shot can't hit you. It's a signifier of things to come in the fight. It's clear that she's all business because her next move is to send out drones to fight for her. This fight is pretty damn good. The fight makes the best use out of the stage of the whole game. The opponent is constantly hiding from the player in order to unload her sniper into you. You can use the walls scattered throughout the stage to protect yourself from getting sniped. Getting hit is a one-shot kill, or at least it was on Furrier. I don't remember if it was on normal. Drones are constantly harassing you, making the game a bit more challenging. This fight changes up the Burst moveset a lot. The arena changes quite a bit too, in every phase. It feels like you're fighting somebody with no honor who's just trying to get the kill any way she can. Her design is really sick too, she's completely shrouded. In the final phase, she lets loose in, you guessed it, another final barrage bullet hell. It's the toughest one of these segments so far, and it might be the toughest one in the entire game, just because you're constantly being sniped at the same time, so you have to find cover and dodge all the other waves and bullets or whatever at the same time. If you didn't lose much health there, you should be totally fine in the final showdown. Nothing new happens next except she's completely invisible. I just relied on the sound anyway, so it wasn't a problem. It is a good way to test if the player is still paying attention though after that hard part. After her death, Rabbit wonders what she would have thought about his plan. He insinuates that it was risky, but it's worth the try. The next area is a pink beach. Beautiful skies. It's serene, but large slash marks litter the beach. Rabbit tells you that the next Guardian did nothing but train with their free time forever. He wonders how someone could get so absorbed in an activity like that that you'll never think about anything else. He ended up thinking about his daughter, and it's what drove him to set all of this in motion. This arena seems to be the smallest scale in the game. You walk onto a wooden dock where your newest opponent looks into the water. The Edge. He's been waiting for you. Waiting for an opponent that he can actually learn from. The Edge hits like a truck, taking out 3 bars of health in a single strike. Your parry timings need to be on point to actually stand a chance at all. He's very fond of fake outs, as he has a couple in his arsenal as well. The window of vulnerability on him is also insanely small. You'll only have time for 1 strike after he attempts to rush you. It's thematically very similar to a samurai duel, where 1 or 2 slashes decides an entire fight. A one-hit fight would obviously be super boring, so this is their compromise. I forgot to tell you, you do tons of damage to him too. That's how it's balanced. This boss only has 4 phases, but they are incredibly solid. The 3rd phase has him change locations to a thinner dock, and he starts fighting you with an oar. Fucking, it's cool shit, bro. It's so cool. This phase can be incredibly tricky because some of his attacks can look very similar and he easily trips you up if he decides to use a delayed strike. The final phase is more of the same, except he can no longer flinch at attacks. So if you were just mashing at his openings, you have to temper yourself and just get in and out really quick. With the ore, he also sends waves of energy towards you that you need to learn how to dodge quickly or just lose. I just wish this fight had more phases. It's so good, and I could see myself really loving it if it was just 1 or 2 more. I can see players getting really annoyed though, because there are some pretty specific requirements in order to beat it. This boss preaches repetition, training, and mastery. Just like the line, you need to do exactly as he says to beat him. Oh, it's so cool that the game does this. Finally, you make it to the last layer of the prison. It's a windy mountain covered in ice and snow. Rabbit lets you know that the final garden is just an idealistic kid, hoping to be the last line of defense, protecting her world. He still asks that you not take her lightly. In terms of skill, she still deserves to be here. You come face to face with her before even making it to the arena. The beat. She blasts you back with a subwoofer looking things on her back and starts running away chuckling. She looks and acts kind of like a plucky young anime protagonist. You begin to chase her across platforms, avoiding unblockables. It's totally fine to take hits or lose a life in this segment because it doesn't reset the level. Even if you take a beating on the way to confronting her, these more traditional top-down segments are very manageable. The more you make it through, the more she questions why you're even doing this. Making it to the end, she blasts you with the largest laser in the game, but it doesn't matter. You lunge forward, slashing her and pushing her to the ground. She gets up to defend herself, but she is the weakest melee fighter in the game. She's tired and hurt. It's not even a fight, it's a beating. She begs, pleading for you not to continue, that you'll destroy her world. You ignore this and give her the nastiest 3-piece she's ever had in her fucking life.
Please, hold my hand.
Going through the door after Rabbit, you can see that you finally made it. Lush grass, a view of the ocean, mountains in the distance, but every step you take burns the earth below your feet. It looks like they were right. The beat was right. You would destroy her world. As you wander around, the credits roll and the screen fades to black. But the game isn't over. After that, you gain control again, and you can run across the grassy plains. Following a path laid out will lead you to a little house. There you can see Rabbit and his daughter. Look at her running around like that little thing and smiling friends. Rabbit leaves you with a few words. He hopes this experience has changed you, and your next decision is what will truly matter. The only place to go now is the metal tower in the distance. You run over, you reach the top, and you see a mecha suit with mounted guns for hands. It turns out it's yours. You begin to fly through space. Looking back, you can see the prisons that had kept you for so long, and continue flying. Flying through, you see a ship. Heading straight for it, you can see rows and rows and rows of people that look exactly like you, with your same suit. Inside the ship, you are welcomed by what I could only describe as a hologram of a woman's head with a physical, mechanical brain. She uploads a planet report, as she puts it. She also calls your character Ryder, which seems more like a title than a name. It's what I'm going to call the protagonist regardless from here on out. Ryder can either confirm the planet's assimilation or cancel it and attack the mothership. Assimilating it will release hordes of people just like you, probably programmed to conquer worlds just like you were. Just one of you caused so much turmoil as to build a revolutionary prison to house you. Looking into the sky, Rabbit holds his daughter in his arms because he knows the end times are here.
Boss, you killed a child.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss.
That's a dark fucking ending. I'm assuming that most people are going to want an ending that fits with the character growth exhibited by Ryder. Denying assimilation gives you one final challenge. The star. Ryder's suit offers no melee options, only guns. The entire fight is a bullet hell. Each and every pattern is more treacherous than the last. Lasers, unblockables, restriction of movement. It is undoubtedly the toughest fight in the game. As with most things, the more you fail, the more you learn. You'll likely take the most game overs in this fight compared to any other. Some patterns might seem unreasonable to dodge and you'll have to shoot at the same time, but you'll find your moments. Slowly you get better and better, getting hit less, finding more opportunities, honing your strategy. The final barrage is the longest in the game as well. It starts slow but ramps up until the entire screen is full. Fortunately, it's one of the easier portions of the fight, but the amount of time that you need to perform well will be the source of your trouble. Lasting 2.5 minutes without dying will finally give you the ability, the opportunity to shoot down the star. It's a great fight. It's definitely disappointing that the final fight in the game doesn't fulfill the main draw of it, which is, Ryder with a sword in his hand, fighting in these dramatic duels. I guess it's fine, but I would have much preferred a humanoid opponent or one that I can melee at least. What we got was pretty great, but I always prefer the sword fights anyway. As the ship begins to explode, the star asks Ryder who will save them next time. Ryder flies away from the ship before the blast can touch him. Rabbit watches from the ground with his daughter's hand in his. He's relieved and walks off. A shining green light can be seen from the ground. and the game ends. This would probably be a good place to end it, but I don't wanna. You may have seen me disappointed in a few bosses' difficulty, but you don't need to worry. The game offers a new difficulty option after you beat the game, Furrier. In it, a lot of my complaints revolving around difficulty are addressed, and you get a real test of your mastery. Damage is inflated for enemies, you recover less health with parries, vulnerability states have much smaller time frames. The scale and the hand, who I thought were super easy, offer a crazy amount of resistance and felt much more fitting for their strong characters and designs. The final boss was also insane on this mode. I was struggling bad, bro. I can still only barely beat it on Furrier. Dude, I spent like 5 hours beating this game on Furrier for the video, and in the end, decided not to use the gameplay because I thought it made the video too long and talking about all the differences. I just used the recording that I got in like 2 hours of the whole game. It was fine though, it was a good game. I just, man, made me delay the video a little bit. I got a job and shit, man. I got responsibilities. I adore this game. It's kind of insane to me that people don't talk about it much whenever they bring up the greatest indies ever released. It needs polish in a few areas though. Oh, it's so good. I'm Frogwater, thanks for joining me. This video gave me an idea for another one, but it'll be super different. Keep a lookout. Either way, I'm gone. I'll see you next time, whenever it is.